This week on Quality Digest Live, we discover that sucking less is no kind of strategy for winning over customers.
That's right. Plus, taking an enterprise-wide approach to supplier audits. That and more when we come back.
For 10 years, Sequence Software has been helping companies solve quality problems as a result of inadequate work instruction processes. Visit sequencesoftware.com to learn more.
Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for December 6th, 2013. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Dirk Ducharme, Editor-in-Chief of Quality Digest.
Yeah, he is, and I'm Quality Digest publisher Mike Richman. Okay, we're going to kick off our show this week, as usual, with a pair of news headlines that caught our eye. First up, is there a foul wind blowing in your office? Wasn't me. Wasn't me. The Knowledge at Wharton blog, however, knows who it is, and in their recent post, Havoc in the Workplace, they describe a serious phenomenon that's poisoning work environments just about everywhere, the so-called hurricane employee. That's right.
We've all seen them.
We've all seen them. Hurricane employees create havoc and disruption in the workplace. The reasons are many: narcissism, negativity, disengagement, too much engagement, territorialism, or even sociopathic behaviors. The bottom line is that hurricane employees put themselves above the needs of their coworkers and the organization itself, and the result can be chaos.
And just to be clear, by hurricane employees, we mean those who kind of come in and
mess everything up.
Mess everything up, like a hurricane blowing through.
That's right, blows through and blows everything away, and there's a lot of reasons, as we talked about. It's personality, really, is what happens. These people have overwhelming personalities, and they mess stuff up. All right. So how do you deal with this issue? Knowledge at Wharton suggests a few practical and common sense steps. One, look beyond talent. Many of these employees are able to get away with this behavior because they can sell, or they can design, or they can anticipate trends better than most.
You need them, in other words.
You need them, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, people with rare abilities are treasured in business. They always will be. But if that person is a hurricane employee, you must consider the social implications of his or her negative behaviors on the larger culture. Makes sense. Second, weigh EQ as much as IQ. Now, raw intellect is always important, but great organizations with great cultures learn to value emotional intelligence just as highly. People with high degrees of empathy, for instance, rarely, if ever, turn into hurricane employees. I mean, they understand how their behaviors affect others. They're empathetic. So if you have empathy, you're probably not going to do that, except in maybe rare occasions where you're having a bad day or whatever. But you're not going to do it consistently. Third, managers need to manage. Those in positions of authority should know the signs of hurricane employees and avoid toxic job applicants. If, however, bad apples are brought into the organization anyway, managers need to deal with the problem swiftly. Any and all disciplinary actions, including terminations, must be considered. Now, managers who downplay or ignore issues of this nature are going to find their authority undermined, and their team members are going to increasingly be pretty apathetic because they feel like they're not heard, they're not supported, and management's letting these crazy people, go and do whatever the heck they're going to do in the organization. Now, that doesn't factor in the fact that maybe sometimes the boss is the hurricane employee.
Yeah, that becomes another issue.
That's a whole other issue. Now, Dirk, a lot of this is common sense stuff, right? And we talked about it a couple of weeks ago on the show in the framework of bullies in the office, too, and what happens. This is similar, really, in many ways. What happens is, I think going back to the first point, is these are talented people often. A lot of times, these alpha kind of personalities are very confident, they're very skilled, and they recognize that, and they just kind of blow over everybody. They bully everybody, and you need to weigh that. You need to weigh the talent of somebody for what they can do versus maybe what they will destroy. There's studies that show that a hurricane employee can reduce efficiency of a team by like 30 or 40%. It's quoted in that Knowledge at Wharton piece. So it's an important issue. I think you need to always balance that, the culture versus talent, and how you weave those two things together.
Well, I think one of the problems, and I think it was in the second point up there, is that very often these might be valuable employees.
Sure.
So now you're kind of, well, this person is valuable to the company. is that value to the company worth more than the disruption to the workplace? And I think sometimes that can be a really hard decision to make, and you have to keep in mind, I think the whole picture is they may be good at their job and doing value for the company in their particular position, but are they so disruptive that they're causing the other employees not to be as good at what they do as they could be, and so maybe the overall effect on the company may be worse than if you were to simply get rid of them.
Definitely. There's some more information on this story, by the way, and all the stories we're going to be covering, Dirk and on the show, are right below the player page, right below there. So check that out.
That's right. Okay. So let's get on to a little bit of technology. We've been talking about the rapid advancements being made in 3D printing for quite a while. It's actually one of my favorite topics. A lot of things going on in 3D printing. Well, it just took, I think, a huge leap forward with a couple of product announcements that we heard this week from 3D Systems. That's the name of the company, 3D Systems, at the recent Euromold convention in Frankfurt. Germany. Ryan Day reported on this in his article, 3D Printing Technology Ready to Translate Vision into Production. There's a link to it below the player page here. So the first product that 3D Systems rolled out was something called the ProJet 4500 3D printer, which appears to be aimed squarely at a consumer product manufacturing. It builds on 3D Systems color. This is interesting, color jet printing technology, and comes with a new class of sustainable, what they call their VisiJet C4 spectrum materials. We'll get to that in just a second. It's a fully integrated material also, it has a fully integrated material recycling system built in, so that it kind of better uses the materials that are used in the 3D printing process. Here are some of the vital statistics. It prints at a resolution of 600 by 600 DPI with a build envelope of 8 inches by 10 inches by 8 inches. The color resolution is a continuous CMY, cyan, magenta, yellow, which delivers nearly 1 million unique colors. Layer thickness is 0.004 inches, and the print speed is 1/3 of an inch per hour in the vertical direction for the full print tray of parts. I think we said the print tray was 8 by 10. So if you're doing the full print tray, you have got you can build at 1/3 of an inch per hour. The technology is pretty interesting, actually. The printer first rolls out a layer of core material. This is a white powder that works as a platform for the color-blended binder material, and also serves as the support structure for overhanging layers. On top of this core material, 3 print heads. It's kind of like an inkjet printer, cyan, magenta, yellow, kind of like an inkjet printer. Deposits the plastic material in liquid form, which then quickly dries to a solid, and then another layer of core material, followed by the color binder, etc. The way most 3D printers work, it builds up one layer at a time. The surrounding core material that is not bound together during the process provides the support for the parts, meaning that no additional structures or supports are needed. There's no post-processing for the plastic parts either, meaning that you can simply pull the part right out of the printer. It comes directly out of the powder base, which is then part of the recovery system, vacuumed back into the materials container to be recycled and used on the next build. So this is a pretty interesting little system. It kind of works like an inkjet printer if you think about it. And the idea that you're getting this continuous tone plastic part at a faster build speed just kind of leads to what I've been saying for a long time, is that 3D printing is just getting faster and faster. It's getting cheaper and cheaper. I mean, you can now go to Staples and buy a 3D printer. It's not super cheap, $1,300, but it's a fully functional, ready to go. It's not a hobbyist kind of thing where you have to build it yourself. You go to Staples, for instance, you buy this thing, $1,300, and you're ready to start printing parts that are, I believe it's a 5.5 by 5.5 by 5.5 or something like that. I'm telling you, 2 Christmases from now, you're going to be seeing these things on the shelf, I think, for $500 or less.
Yeah, prices will come down.
Yeah, it's definitely going to come down. Yeah,
and that wasn't the only product that 3D.
No, they had another one. Well, a multi-material system
that was less for consumer. It was more for manufacturing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So check that out. The story again, right below the player page for the announcements, and a really good video. They did a live video unveil from Euromold
at Euromold.
Well.
Yeah.
So check out the on-demand version of that as well, right below the video player is the story. You can check that out from there.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, Dirk. Okay. Well, we're going to turn to our features now, and the first feature we had that we're going to cover paper this week was an article we ran in Monday's issue, I believe, of Quality Digest Daily, called "Sucking Less is Not a Customer Experience Strategy." That's good advice right there. Yep. And that was written by Annette Franz Glinecki, I believe is how she pronounces her last name, Glinecki, and that ran again in Monday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. So let me set the stage for you a little bit here. Annette and some other folks were involved in a live broadcasted Google Hangout, kind of a roundtable, talking about customer experience a few weeks back. And she led off with a stat from Forrester Research that said, it's an interesting stat, 93% of executives, business executives surveyed in this stat, said that the customer experience is one of their organization's strategic priorities. However, only 37% of those had a dedicated budget allocated to improving the customer experience. So talk about not putting your money where your mouth is, right? 93% says it's important strategically, yet only 37% actually allocate any budget towards it. We know what happens when budget doesn't get allocated.
Yeah, it doesn't get done.
An organization doesn't get done. So Annette kind of jumped off from there, and she said there's really three kinds of leaders that cause this type of disconnect in organizations. The first is one who doesn't understand that great customer experiences can drive business success, just doesn't get it, just doesn't understand it. The second is one who doesn't care or doesn't care to understand that great customer experiences drive business success. And the third one is the one that who doesn't spend the time focusing on customer experiences because business is good. Hey, business is great. We don't have to worry about this stuff, right? It's fine. They're getting a good enough experience, so it doesn't matter. We don't need to do any better. Well, as you could well figure, I think, Annette focuses on contestant number 3 in that lineup, the one who says that business is great now, probably just now, business is great, because, you know, we know this, if you ignore your customer and you ignore your customer's complaints, they'll go away eventually. Right. The complaint and the customer.
And the customer.
Will go away because, I mean, that's just the way it works, right? I mean, you know, if you don't address what people are calling you about, you're going to not be able to, you're going to not be able to find out what's going on. You're going to not be able to peer down and find out what those issues are. And the poster children for that kind of an organization really are those that have captive audiences, like cable companies, you know, cell phone companies, you know, people that are selling services on contract where they rope you in with probably a really attractive introductory offer, and then they just don't fulfill after a period of time. And you know, there's problems with service interruptions, whatever it may be, and ultimately people call and they can't get their problem resolved. And the company doesn't really care.
Because you're a captive audience.
You're captive, you're in there. I mean, this goes back to something that we talked about on the show not that long ago called failure demand. Right, John Seddon has talked about this, and Trip Babbitt has talked about this. Failure demand, where you are failing to address demands that your customers are laying down on you. They're saying, you know, my service is being interrupted, or when I do X, Y happens all the time. Why does that? Can you fix that for me? And maybe they fix it in the short term, but they don't ever really fix it. They don't ever really get to the heart of the problem. You know, is anybody doing a root cause analysis of that data? I mean, we have the ability now through analyzing real data, big data, to really start to gather information from the voice of the customer and take action on it. If you want, if you have the desire to do so. Again, if you're one of these three companies, one of these third type of companies, a leader that says business is great, we don't have to deal with it, well, then you're not going to get the benefit of that. You're not going to be able to figure out what customers are complaining about and take steps to correct it. Right? It starts with a desire. It starts with the interest in figuring out what's really going on out there. And I think this, in my opinion, this gets to the heart of a very strategic difference. The difference between churn and retention. Right? A lot of these companies, their basic model is churn.
Is churn, right.
You know, they don't really care. They say, well, it's too much work. It's too much work to really have good customer service at the call center level or whatever it may be, or online. So, yeah, we're going to try to retain our customers if we can, but essentially we're just going to come out with great introductory offers, and we're going to rope them into 2 or 3 year contracts, and that's going to be our business model. And again, that works. Many times people are saying, business is great, we don't have to worry about it, right? And besides, you know, within a framework of our industry, we're doing great. We're doing better than our competitor. Look at what they're doing.
That's where the sucking less comes in.
Right, we suck less than them.
Yeah, we're bad, but they're worse.
They're worse.
So stay with us. Yeah.
That's right. I mean, but what Annette's saying here, and she points out very clearly, is, well, how are you ever going to push your industry forward? If you're looking at the lowest common denominator in your industry and saying we're better than them, well, how are you ever going to really push it forward? I mean, customers want great service. Today they need great service. And even if you don't necessarily have to deliver great service right now to stay in business or even stay profitable. You have to still anyway, because things change. Churn is not a strategy. Sucking less is not a strategy. You need to hear your customers and you need to take action on what they're complaining about. If you have failure demand, you're going to go out of business eventually, because people, especially nowadays with Yelp and things where people can use social media to complain, you're going to get crushed. Net Promoter Score is going to crush you, because people are going to give you, we know from Net Promoter Score, in case anyone remembers as NPS, that people that give 9s and 10s, in other words, great representatives of your organization who love you, are way less influential than the ones that give you 0s, 1s, and 2s in terms of hurting you.
Yeah.
You know, you really get crushed by those people that don't like you on Net Promoter Score. So these are big issues, and the Net's, I think, dealing with it in an interesting way to say, yeah, you're sucking less than your competitor.
Yeah, but all it takes is somebody to come along who's a little bit better, and you have no customer loyalty. They're going to jump ship.
Of course, what she's saying is, even if you don't need to be better, because eventually there's going to be that competitor that is better. So you want to ensure yourself, and we know, I think, that it takes way more to get a new customer than to keep one you already have. And I think that's really the point of this piece. A really good piece. Check it out. Again, it's right below the player page right there. The article, again, Sucking Less is Not a Customer Experience Strategy by Annette Franz Glenecki.
Yep, and in a somewhat related topic that we're going to talk about now, has to do with supplier audits. 52% of product recalls across all industries are due to supplier and contract manufacturer issues, according to the report Recall Execution Effectiveness Report. That sounded a little redundant. Okay. Even when there are quality agreements between manufacturers and their suppliers, it's usually the manufacturer that is held liable for mistakes. Usually something goes wrong, you don't go to their supplier, you say, it's the person you bought the product from, right? So therefore, ideally, manufacturers should evaluate their suppliers to ensure they're receiving quality materials to build their end product. And this is done typically through external auditing of their suppliers. However, as any of you who have tried to go this route, this isn't always easy. So here to talk about supplier audits and what you can do to make the process not only easier, but more effective is Karu, Industry Solution Director at Sparta Systems and a subject matter expert on FDA regulations. Good morning, KR.
Good morning and good afternoon. Good to see you, Dirk and Mike.
Yep. Well, just to lay the groundwork, quickly tell us the importance or the requirements of doing supplier audits.
Well, if you want to take a step, over the past 5-6 years, you've really seen contract manufacturers come into place, suppliers, and the supply chain for a finished product goes across continents, across countries, people don't manufacture within their four walls anymore, and as that supply chain moves out, it becomes, managing quality becomes much more difficult.
Okay, so just to be clear, what we're going to talk about a little bit here is how software in particular can help streamline this process. So one of the problems you point out in your article, the article's called Build Trust with Suppliers Through Auditing, is that the suppliers themselves may be overwhelmed with audit scheduling and audit requirements from a whole bunch of different vendors, all coming to them saying, hey, we need to do a supplier audit, and they've got all these different vendors and they have to schedule the time and all that sort of stuff. How would software help in this kind of situation?
Well, it helps in a lot of ways. It's even beyond that. When you have some very large manufacturers, they have multiple auditing groups, and we hear from suppliers all the time that one auditing group from a company is walking out the door while another auditing group from the same company is walking in. Some people are doing financial audits, others are looking at their systems, some are looking at their manufacturing processes, and internally these audit groups don't know each other. So bringing all these audits together into a single software system where they can actually share data, and when an auditing group goes in, they're not asking the same questions over and over again that someone else in their company might have already gotten, and they can really concentrate on that small part that they're looking at and get in and out very quickly.
So, Karu, take us from the other side of the equation, from the procurement company side. How does the software help in that end of the equation?
Well, it's the same thing. If you think about a company and the term auditor, what does an auditor do? An auditor is checking the quality of whatever part of the process that they're looking at. So pretty much in every company, everybody's an auditor at one point in time or another. And having all this disparate information being held in silos within the companies, again, departmentally or by business unit, where they're calling on the same people, being able to share that information, it's a dollars and cents issue, that people aren't doing the same thing over and over and over again. And even worse, maybe one auditing group comes to a different conclusion than another, and if something happens with the product and they start to investigate, it's, hey, you knew about it. Well, one group knew about it, the other group didn't.
Let me put you on the spot here a little bit. When your article ran, we had a reader who wrote into us and saying, you know, this type of, there's a lot of software out there that kind of does this, but it's fairly expensive, particularly on an enterprise-wide rollout. This isn't an inexpensive investment. So what is the ROI? I mean, can you give us an example of how this software pays for itself in the long term? And what is the ROI? Is it a year? Is it 2 years? What are we talking about here?
Okay, well, ROI is usually less than a year. Again, what ends up, and I'll give you an example from a top 10 pharmaceutical company that we work with that did put in a global auditing system for auditing their suppliers, and they started out by doing an inventory of who their auditing groups were. They were able to standardize their audits. Obviously, they're looking at different things. A financial person isn't going to be asking the same questions as a quality person, isn't going to be asking the same questions as an IT person. But there's some general information about that company that goes across them all. So they standardize that. They're able to look at that. And this company also had auditing groups between country to country to country, so and no one was communicating with each other. So bringing that communication together and saying, we need to buy this raw material, who is approved to supply it? You know, they were able to look across the board. They suddenly found economies in that someone had found a supplier in one part of the world that could supply to other parts of the world for a lot less money. They were already approved by the company. So it's not like you have these different groups doing things over and over and over again. So actually they were able to reduce the number, not the number of auditing groups, but the number of auditors, because they started sharing audits. They also were able to look at scheduling and, you know, not send one group to China while another group is in India, while another group is in Germany, while another group is in Ohio. They were able to, you know, kind of team them together and go places. So there was a travel economy also. So the ROI comes from a lot of different places, but it really brings it together, and you know, it's a measurable savings.
So two things I took out of what you just said is part of the savings come from less duplicated effort. You don't have multiple people doing exactly the same thing, but it sounds like there's also, in terms of being able to winnow out your suppliers. You may have multiple suppliers basically doing the same thing, when really, instead of 4 suppliers, you could have 2 suppliers. It's just nobody knew your supply chain was kind of stretched out in all sorts of different directions.
That's absolutely true. And let's not forget the quality part of this, which is the most important part. That if the quality fails with one of those suppliers, let's see who else we have, what's their quality, and because of these audits in there, they really look. The other ROI that this company and others have realized is they really put it together with other quality processing. Auditing is part of it. Out of audits come observations and come CAPAs and change management and things like that. And bringing that all together and connecting the dots is really, one, it's a dollar saving, but more importantly, there's a better quality product, finished product going to market.
Okay. Well, that's about all the time we have right now, KR. But if you guys, if viewers, if you're interested in a little bit more information on supplier audits and how a software solution can help kind of streamline this process and maybe give you some extra savings within your supply chain, you'll want to look at the webinar on December 12th at 11 a.m. Pacific, December 12th at 11 a.m. Pacific. Increase supply chain integrity by maximizing supplier audits. That's a free webinar. If you click on the article link for KR's article below the player page there, from that page, there will be a link out to register for the webinar. So, KR, thank you for being with us this morning.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Okay, so long.
We'll see you on Thursday. All right, good stuff there, yeah.
Yeah, it's the ROI is important. I mean, as we kind of touched on, there are a lot of there are several large companies out there that sell software in this space, but it's not inexpensive, particularly as you're talking about, if you're going to roll it out globally, you want to see that ROI, and it looks like the ROI really comes from being able to really more streamline the process than anything. I mean, you're really saving time.
Efficiency as well as quality.
Efficiencies,
as well as better quality, sure, absolutely. Great, good stuff there. Well, thanks, Ken.
Do we have time for tweet?
Sure, do a tweet of the week.
Tweet of the week. We had a tweet of the week this week. Interesting tweet we thought came up. Maybe Christopher, if you can pop that up there. Guy Wallace, his tweet of the week is, "If you build it, will they come? And will you update it? There we go. As needed." Something to ponder there.
Always a good tweet of the week.
So you have to think about it a little bit.
I think that one almost has to go back with 3D printing. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of an interesting thing. All right. Well, check it out. If you have a tweet of the week that you want to line up for us and send to us, just hit us up on Twitter. That's Twitter. Quality Dodge is at Twitter, right? Is that, okay. Right on. Okay. Well, that's our show for the week. But before we go, we'd like to thank today's sponsor, Sequence Software. When you're in manufacturing, getting work instructions to the shop floor can be pretty frustrating. Until now. For 10 years, the team at Sequence Software has been helping companies overcome quality problems stemming from inadequate work instruction processes. Never again cobble together something with Word or Excel. To learn more, visit www.sequencesoftware.com or just click on the banner ad just below or just to the right of our player screen.
That's right. Well, we're going to finish the show this morning with a little pondering by our friend Mike Micklewright. So, are you just putting a Band-Aid on your problems?
Band-Aid.
Band-Aid. Well, here's what Mike Micklewright has to say. So long. Have a good weekend.
See you next week.
Did you ever wonder why we call short-term solutions to problems Band-Aids? Years ago, Farm Aid was created by band members to aid farmers after a crisis. I don't think Band-Aids were created by farmers to aid band members. They didn't experience any crisis, as far as I know. Band-Aid is a word like Xerox and Coke, in that it was a specific brand or company name that became a generic name for any product that was similar to it. Like, I'll take a Coke. What kind? Well, Pepsi, please. Or, please go make a Xerox of that on the Toshiba copier. But Band-Aid also became an accepted term for any short-term fix to a problem in the business world because that's exactly what it is like in the physical world. Its purpose is to stop the bleeding. In the business world, one applies a Band-Aid to a wounded process to also stop the bleeding of bad parts or services. Like this. Here's a wound that I received today. It's bleeding, and I'm going to place a Band-Aid on it to stop the bleeding. Now, this is where there's a big difference between what happens in the business world and what happens in the physical world. In the physical world, I'll always take the Band-Aid off after the bleeding stops because I don't like what it looks like to my customers. They could be my friends or my spouse or the family or even the mirror. In the business world, I keep the Band-Aid in place for a long time, perhaps forever, because I don't care what it looks like because my customers will never see it. I wounded my leg 2 weeks ago, and I put a Band-Aid on it then. I did not remove it. This is what it looks like now. And this is what your ever-present Band-Aids in your company look like. What process do you have in place to remove these Band-Aids? After doing a corrective action, do you have a step that states remove the containment action or remove the Band-Aid? I doubt it. And why not? After all, you automatically remove your physical Band-Aids because they're ugly. You should have a process like that in your organization as well. I'm the wise guy, Mike Mickelwright.